Every once in a while, when I drive around these streets of St. George, and especially up on the Red Hills Parkway, I think to myself, I'm living my father's dream. In 1989, my father and stepmother, Dora, wanted to move to St. George. They were living in Aurora, Colorado. Now, Dad and I and my stepmom moved to Phoenix, Arizona in 1963, so we were used to the desert. So was he. He grew up in a place south of El Paso in Mexico, so he was used to the desert. And so he had worked his whole life doing business, and he was very successful at what he did. But now that he was retired, he and my stepmom wanted to move to a place that was, I don't know, just a little better, a little cooler, hated the snow. And so they decided they wanted to move to St. George. And so when he was 76 years old, well, 75 actually, he had my stepmother's nephew build a house here in St. George in Bloomington Hills. And it was right on the golf course. It was right, the street faced the golf course. And so I just, in my mind, I could picture seeing him just walk out the door with his golf club slung over his arm and just walking over to the golf course and having a good time. That was his dream. That's what he wanted to do. And as it turned out, in 1990, in the December, there was a snowstorm in Aurora, and he had gone out and was shoveling the snow and suffered a fatal heart attack. And so he didn't get to live his dream. My stepmother moved to St. George after the funeral, after they sold their house in Aurora. I helped her move down here. And I was living in Southern California at the time. And I remember moving her into the house and getting her all set up. And it was interesting. She made it about 3 or 4 years living here, but basically by herself, with all of her relatives stopping by and visit her. St. George is kind of a centrally located place in southern Utah that is fairly convenient for people coming up from the south, from Arizona, from California, Nevada, and people coming down from the north, up in Idaho, Montana, and northern Utah. And so a lot of people would come and visit her. She had a good time, but she just didn't like living by herself. And so she eventually sold a home here in Bloomington Hills and moved up with her sister up in Fountain Green, Utah. So that was that. So here I am, living in Salt Lake with my wife. We both retired. She retired in 2016, and so we moved up here into Salt Lake so we could be closer to her family, who lived up in northern Utah. And I protested. I didn't want to come up because I don't like the snow. I mean, my father died shoveling snow, and so I didn't have too good of thoughts about that myself. Every time in the wintertime when we lived in Salt Lake and I'd be out shoveling the snow, I'd always have the thought of my dad in my mind as I was shoveling the snow, thinking, well, am I going to go out the same way? But I didn't. And in 2025, we moved from Salt Lake down here to St. George. I've been here a year. And all the time I'd be driving around this beautiful scenery down here. It's kind of I don't know, it's just a picturesque place. Everywhere you look, whether it's downtown or up in the outskirts where you're up in the hills looking around, everywhere you look, north, south, east, or west, you see these beautiful red hills, scenic mountains, and a lot of historic sites. And it's just really a blast here. So here I am, living here in St. George with my beautiful wife and my oldest son and his family. My 4 little grandsons all live close by, so we all love this warm, dry air that is just wonderful for us. And now I realize that I'm living my father's dream. And it's interesting how a place is important for what it is, but it's more important for what it does to you. I've flourished since I lived. We've been here a year now, and I love it. I love the weather. I love the scenery. And I love what I'm able to do. I'm able to tell my stories and work with my 4 little grandsons in a place we call a cave. It's out in our extra garage, and I've got it all set up where we do all kinds of fun things. We paint. We teach them how to do watercolors and do all kinds of little children crafts, and it's a real pleasure. But every once in a while, I think of my dad and how he would have loved it being here.
Always faithful.